Even in the late 20th century, the age of scientific gardening, an abundance of garden beliefs remains to us. In the years 1973 to 1976, through the courtesy of newspaper and magazine editors in Britain, the Republic of Ireland and the United States, I was able to appeal for instances of gardening traditions and received many enjoyable letters from those who clearly cherished their superstitions and are eager to record them. Old customs and old wives' fables ought not to be buried in oblivion. There may be some truth and usefulness to be picked out of them, John Aubrey wrote in the 17th century. Many modern gardeners would agree. Garden folklore survives with the peculiar power of beliefs woven from memories and union with the past. A living garden is perhaps the most intimate gift offered by one generation to the next. Horticulture, as practiced by the primitive peoples of tropical Africa, must have preceded agriculture as such. Man's earliest crop tools were the digging stick and hoe rather than the plough. Garden beliefs, so richly diverse, reflect this antiquity. Paganism modified by Christianity is readily perceived. Moon and zodiac favour plant growth, propitiatory and protective rites are acknowledged. The cult of the Earth Mother or White Goddess, unobtrusive yet resilient, must be chalked up to immemorial magic. Wise gardeners are aware, as they always have been, of the dangers of slighting the goddess, of the tributes due to her, of favours to be received. Her cult is far from dead. Its 20th century aspect is the biodynamic gardening movement, which underlines the wisdom of cooperation with nature rather than her exploitation. As it has for the last 6,000 years, which have elapsed since man's first attempts at horticulture, the seasonal calendar offers reliable reminders to those gardeners not fettered by the printed word. When in earlier years, blights, witches' work, struck as if from a clear sky, the gardener stood vigilant with his counterblast of spells and protective plantings. Traces of such prophylactic magic survive. Universality of belief is a striking feature of garden lore. With subtle variations, the same superstitions and precautions appear in one culture after another, even in countries thousands of miles apart. The folklore of growing things is not contained by frontiers. Today, there is increasing interest in responses of plant to plant and plant to gardener, which, beginning to be accepted by science, suggest that old beliefs concerning green thumbs and life indexes may go far beyond the pure superstition that they seem at first glance. Far from being artis perditae, ancient remedies for pests and diseases devised by our gardeners, using homely, handy ingredients centuries before the arrival of gardening by chemicals may be as effective, and are almost invariably safer than the answers of science. The biodynamic movement has given fresh life to traditional garden recipes and companion plantings, which are emerging again as serious aids to gardeners. Although not, of course, directly interested in folklore as such, organisations which have reassessed certain old garden practices include in the United States the Biodynamic Farming and Gardening Association, Inc., and in Britain the Henry Doubleday Research Association and Biodynamic Agricultural Association, whose work flows from the concepts of Dr. Rudolf Steiner, founder of anthroposophy. In his youth, Dr. Steiner had observed the traditional practices of the peasant farmers of Europe and incorporated his conclusions in an agricultural course given at Kobowitz in Germany in 1924. The BDAA is concerned with the interplay of invisible forces in a visible world, with links between plants and formative influences in soil and atmosphere, and with extraterrestrial agents such as the sun, moon, and stars. What is to be made of this mass of garden beliefs? So apparently contradictory, so fine-drawn the distinctions, so personal the arguments that perhaps our conclusion might be that no conclusions are to be drawn. But superstitions of pedigree have been well tested by time. When they come to the trial, they all vanish away like smoke, wrote John Parkinson in a happy Elizabethan phrase, or they survive triumphantly. In garden folklore today, the message is plain. Old-time gardeners, depending upon ancient secrets, undoubtedly scored remarkable successes. We must ask, could they have done as well had they ignored superstition? Can we do better if we heed it? Greater knowledge will be needed before these lacunae can be filled. Still, the answer to the last question might well turn out to be an emphatic yes. In this book, the writer has been collector, not apologist. A vast, almost undocumented subject imposed its own selective approach. An Anglo-American bias is obvious, but even so, many omissions are unavoidable, and there is perhaps less exploration of motive than the interest of the belief's merits. A tradition concerned with making plants grow was generally preferred to one of the plant mythology or reputation. For reasons of space only, a selection of the hundreds of fascinating beliefs which correspondents described so vividly in their letters could find a place in the book. But every letter threw valuable light on one or more of the varied aspects of garden folklore, and all letters have been preserved carefully for the future. Much, of course, remains to be collected. Perhaps this survey will encourage others to look out for the gardening beliefs of their own neighbourhoods.